Hello there everyone, welcome back. Do I have a treat for you this time around, as apparently we're going to have ourselves a rematch with Lord Admiral Neptis. And if you don't know why this is a rematch, I have been encountering him several times in my last live Twitch stream there, before I decide to dive into ranked mode. And with him going with the heavy Novacan spamming tactic, at least in progression mode, persistent mode, he was giving me a hard time, needless to say, just because of how easy the Novacans can be at doing damage to the Eldar. Not quite eliminating him entirely, because I still have that raw burst potential to kill ships relatively quickly if I get a good angle on him, especially with my torpedoes. But with that in mind, with the matches that I know of him at least spamming the Novacans on me there, kind of like metagaming me, it would be the term for it, since he kind of knows I was queuing for matches at the time as Eldar. It remains to be seen if he's going to do the same strategy in the ranked mode or not, because it's a whole different beast altogether. With best of 3 match, you're going to have to fall victim to attrition, and what I ultimately decide to do as a result of that is I'm going to go with the Eclipses and the Void Stalkers here. I'm going for the raw health pool over the raw fire potential with my Auroras. And normally, I am really against this. Ultimately, because it's a simple way to be effective with the Eldar faction, because that's what all the other Eldar players seem to do. They go with the Eclipses, they go with their Void Stalker, especially in persistent mode. Hell, I could argue even in ranked mode with the few times I had with damn it, I forget the Eldar's name there. Even with the 2 matches I played as Imperial Navy against him, it's off the tip of my tongue. I can't remember his name. I apologize, because you were the top Eldar player. But even then, he had his Eclipses and Void Stalkers favored. He went all out on the Void Stalkers and Eclipses and forsaken his Auroras and Shadows entirely. And quite frankly, what I ultimately decided when playing as Eldar is I did not want to go the same route. I want to try and get value out of all my ships there. Hell, I was even committed to try and understand how to get value out of the Torpedo Shadow Cruiser, which instead of bombers like I have for my ranked mode, it had torpedoes, which made it a little bit awkward, needless to say. I still haven't quite figured out how to get value out of it, but if I'm planning on doing a best of 3 type match, I really need to understand where my ships are valuable. And so far it's been working out well for me, I want to say, because those Aurora combos with the Void Stalker just rivals, if not eclipses, no pun intended, the actual battle cruiser's damage potential just because of the extra torpedoes I have on it. Not to mention it's the same amount of pulsars for the same amount of points. But this is my reasoning for fielding the Eclipses and the Void Stalkers for this match. Just having the sheer amount of health pool with the Hellborn. Just basically I'm going to try and solid run with them immediately there, and just have them spotting ships that might be hidden. But ultimately, if I'm good about my control, about my awareness, I don't have to worry about detection so much, because I'm not as liable to solid run and ships being hidden from gas clouds as I would like any traditional bomber fleet. It's really my Void Stalker that suffers in that regards, and even then, I probably use the bombers for the killing blow more often than not, so I would probably be diving aggressively regardless. But I'm expecting Novacans come in this match, and my thought process is justified here. Although I'm only seeing 1 Novacan at the moment. And the truth be told, the only Novacans he has for his matches is actually his Mars. He has 2 Marses in the asteroid belt hiding in the back, you can see in the main map now. Although I did not notice them until later, because I have a tyrant to deal with right now. So we're going to get super aggressive here. We're even going to ignore the torpedoes a slight bit. Hell, I luckily only take 1 torpedo hit from diving in so aggressively. And even with the autocast supercharged Void Shield, his shields almost went down immediately. If I can figure out if there's a way to just burst through that with a nice singular combo, that would be a vicious, needless to say. Just negates his supercharged Void Shields altogether. But as it stands now, he gets that 10-second immunity. We got a trap in his stasis bomb, and torpedoes are about to ruin his day, because already a third of his health is gone from just torpedoes and maybe the bombers. I don't think it's the bombers just yet, but the follow-up shot sure as hell is going to kill. Because the Tyrant is unsupported, the frigates are pretty much no concern at all at this point. And hell, this thing is pretty much going to burn to death as is, just from the fire results. But we need to... Well, actually, I take that back. The bombers managed to destroy it just before I lose vision, so... You could not ask for a better execution, can you? And while these Nova Cannons are getting hit, thankfully, they're only hitting one ship there so far, so... If he was getting multiple ships with those Nova Cannons, I would suffer from a bit of attrition pretty soon, even with this beacon on top of my Eclipse right now. I try and compose myself a little bit for the next attack by spraying up my ships, but in all honesty, we should try and get ready for our next attack there as I dodge another Nova Cannon. He is staggering the Nova Cannon shots a little bit, which does help me a little bit in preparing to dodge them, because again, he only has 2 Nova Cannons, which is a far cry of 4, which is where he can overwhelm me with my falls maneuver and boost if I really want to focus entirely on dodging. And hell, all of his abilities are kind of auto-cast right now, which I kind of question a little bit, because he wasted his supercharged void shield and a shield transfer for one single Eclipse, and I argue that's not worth it. I really argue that's not worth it as I get ready for my next attack run. And yes, I'm aware of this minefield. I'm willingly flying my Void Stalker towards it because I want to get that pulsar shot, but for some reason it's not firing. With 9,000 meter range, you figure this thing would be shooting right now, but I think it's because my damn battle cruisers are kind of in the way. And unfortunately, if this thing had fired sooner, I could have dodged that mine, but as it stands now, it's the only real damage this Void Stalker even took so far. So I'm kind of okay with it as his first Mars is about to go down. His first Mars is about to go down, and I'm only going to take an extra 100 points of damage here, because I managed to dodge the first Nova Cannon, thankfully. Things are looking a bit iffy though, but with 2 of his cruisers gone and only 1 Mars left, we don't really have much in raw firepower and actual fleet to deal with. It's just the damn station we're going to have to contend with. And I decide ultimately to just warp out this Eclipse, preserve it. We're in good shape as is, and both my second Eclipse is in good shape, and if I hadn't hit that mine, that Void Stalker also be at over half health right now. And those torpedoes are doing work in close proximity, aren't they? And with bombers to help complement it, even with his assault running, I do manage to... Did I get the bomb hits before I lost vision? It's really hard to say, because I know they were on top of him when I boost out. I was not watching for the damage at the time. But nonetheless, unsupported, nothing defended, this thing is all but dead at this point. Hell, even the fire result's just going to negate the repairs as I get ready to dodge myself here. Dodge the Mars, and with the macro cannons actually damn, it can't actually shoot me aside for the 2 lance turns it has. And with this close proximity, I'm actually within its minimum range where it can't actually hit me with the Nova Cannon, so that was like the best situation for me as far as that auto cannon shot. Or auto fire shot, I'm going to assume. But all his cruisers are gone, the battle cruisers are gone, and while this may seem like a questionable play, probably is the safer one. Warp out my ships because they all have the navigator, so they're not going to suffer any loss to warp effects. And quite frankly, I feel like I destroy what I need to. The 2 Marses are gone. He committed a Tyrant as 1 cruiser there, so he didn't decide to go with his 3rd Nova Cannon. So we got rid of his main weapon. At least the main weapon he used against me. So from here on out, despite the loss of the first round, the ultimate question is, can he handle fighting an Eldar fleet without his Nova Cannons? Can he actually handle that? Because I want to say he cannot. Because quite frankly, he metagamed me to the point where he relied entirely on Nova Cannons for when I played in the persistent mode recording, the Twitch stream. He was relying entirely on what I would consider a gimmick a little bit. It is effective against Eldar, but if he doesn't have a backup plan, especially for like a best of 3, where when those Marses are gone, he cannot get them back, it might as well be considered a gimmick, quite frankly. Because he has no fallback at this point. That's what I'm gambling on here with that warp out. I decided to preserve my Void Stalker, preserve my Eclipse, because there was still a chance that they could have got overwhelmed by all the frigates. Especially since I only have a Void Stalker that can reliably kill the frigates, and quite frankly, it would have been too slow to destroy the frigates with just the bombers itself. It would have had better luck if I had my 2 shadows in there, because then they could have took him out 2 at a time while still focusing on the station. But we go back to my planetary defense. We're gambling on him not really having much in Nova cannons anymore. At least if the last match was an indication, I destroyed 3 cruisers, which even if he had 2 dominators, he would only have 2 Nova cannons left to deal with. To field anyway. And that is far more manageable, like I said before, than having to deal with 4 Nova cannons. So this is a bit of my gambit with how I'm playing out this series. If I can wear out the Nova cannons, I can basically destroy the rest of his fleet relatively handily, I want to say. And it's going to pay off a little bit, I want to say, because he has no more Nova cannons for this match. He's relying entirely on standard macro battery cruisers and a retribution. As far as what he's feeling this time, he has a Gothic, I think he has another Tyrant, and he has a retribution for his 3rd ship, and of course the Widowmaker in front there. So the Widowmaker is going to make things a little bit complicated, needless to say, but the only thing I have going for me is the Void Blending will allow me to stay hidden for any potential Nova cannons, because at this point I'm not certain if he has any more or not. And it allows me to have a window to attack from an awkward angle, if nothing else. But once I decide to commit, he is going to see me and there's not much I'm going to be doing about it. Especially since he has those beacons to also reveal me, which he has been using in the last match. So he's going to use them again here, despite the fact he has a Widowmaker. Despite the fact he has a Widowmaker, which I do kind of question a little bit. Mainly because I've been doing okay without having to rely on extra beacons outside of maybe my Dauntless with the Lance. That was the only one I really committed to, like, scouting potential with its extra mobility in that. But we know where the Widowmaker is. It's revealed my Void Stalker already. And we're just trying to slow down his fleet and hopefully get a nice window for this Widowmaker as well. Because with 9,000 range, and I obviously see it, I can fairly easily get these shots off, although I do miscontrol this quite heavily. And with the shield transfer, he actually does keep that thing alive, even with 4 pulsars. So we get a good initial hit. The beacon is not really concerned for my Void Stalker, because I'm kind of using this as my bait. I was hoping to kill this Widowmaker really damn quickly. And there is a bit of latency, apparently, because that Widowmaker had a bit of a delay on its destruction, or not its destruction, but the damage from those pulsars. And sadly, as a result, I do get detected before my Auroras can get in there. That would have been amazing if the Void Stalker could have just killed it with the pulsars before actually getting the Auroras in there. That would have been a perfect combo for hiding my Auroras, and being able to chip them down. But as it stands now, what my strategy is here is I'm overwhelming his 2 cruisers here. I'm not going after one single cruiser, I'm actually going after both of them. And this is how I'm going to do it, folks. I use the Void Stalker to kind of force a supercharged Void Shield on both his ships. And now we're going to hit them with the Maelstrom. We got 3 Maelstroms available to us, and I'm going to use them to completely eviscerate 2 cruisers at once. That's what I'm hoping for. And with the bombers and 2 more Maelstroms available, that is a very likely situation. Although I'm starting to get a lot of critical hits on my Void Stalker, mainly because of the lack of belt armor. But in this situation, I only would have prevented the deck getting destroyed, since that was what was first was lost. So it may not have made a big outcome with my mobility, but nonetheless, we got the Gothic. He does make warp jump into the Void Stalker, which isn't a huge deal, because it actually hasn't really taken any damage yet to be a real threat. And he's turning towards the objective there, so force him to choose his priorities is actually working out well for me, as this Tyrant is heavily damaged, but I'm not quite going to get the kill, despite the fact I was half considering ramming this thing to get the killing blow. Half ramming it, half trying to get the Star Cannons to do the damage. I was kind of neglecting, or not really worried about the Maelstrom all that much, because I was doing so much more damage to him I could afford it. And this Retribution is not in the best position to get the most ideal shots, but it's the only ship left. We know there's a supercharged Void Shield to deal with, so we're going to try, if Lobber torpedoes, try and get some damage on it, although the Void Stalker could have withheld on the pulsars a little bit. I want to go in just for a torpedo run, quite frankly, while I wait for that to burn out. And while the torpedoes are a bit hit and miss there, they do soften up the battleship quite nicely, I gotta say. As we do get a few hits, a third of its health's gone just from torpedoes alone. And now I'm just here to use my boost and falls maneuver to try and mitigate a lot of this macro battery. Because this is like the best situation for his retribution in terms of damage, because he's firing from both sides, hitting the Auroras and the Void Stalker. But this is a worthwhile trade-off. Quite frankly, it's a worthwhile trade-off, because just look how quickly that thing is melting right now. And the Auroras haven't even taken any damage despite the macro batteries he's been lobbing at them. And so far, the Gambit is looking promising. No Novacans just means I eviscerate his fleet. Hell, it was a little bit stylish there, destroying 2 cruisers almost at once with the Maelstrom combo. If he hadn't burned those shield transfers, I'm certain he still had shield transfers, or he had them on that fleet, because I know I saw him before for the Widowmaker. Hell, if he had saved those from the Widowmaker and used it for the cruiser, maybe they would have lived a little bit longer. At least it would have made things awkward, considering I was trying to go for a double kill. But really, the Gothic wouldn't have done much with its lance set up there, so in all honesty, if I had to focus on a target, it probably would have been the Tyrant. In all honesty, I would have probably just focused on the Tyrant if I didn't go for a double kill. It was just in the middle of the fleet, so the Gothic ramming me was the big threat, so I kind of had to force myself to fight the Gothic as well, which is why the Aurora prioritized the Gothic while the Void Stalker shot down the Tyrant. And it paid off nicely in that regard, mainly due to overwhelming shield transfers, I want to say. That's what it seemed like anyway, since he had him on autocast and everything. So now, it comes to figuring out what his last fleet's going to be. I already know for a fact I destroyed all his cruisers. I quite literally destroyed every single cruiser except for a heavily damaged Tyrant. So it's not going to be in play this match. So all he has is a bunch of Dauntlesses and frigates, so we are preparing ourselves for potentially a frigate swarm here. So torpedoes are a little bit hit and miss here, so shadows are going to be doing that nicely, so long as I can keep a good safe space. That's the strategy. Try and not get swarmed by several of the frigates at once, assuming he goes that route. Well, really, he doesn't have much of a choice unless he wants to go all Dauntlesses, quite frankly. And he almost does that, because what he's going to be fielding for this match is 3 Dauntlesses and the rest are going to be swords. So it's not quite the true frigate swarm I was expecting, quite frankly, but it's close enough. Close enough that I have to take seriously. Quite cautiously there, because with 200 health ramming and 50 armor on the swords, quite frankly, they're better at ramming my ships than me ramming them. The only exception might be Eclipses, because they have 800 health versus the Shadow 600. Because remember, I have 25 armor, and I only do half damage for the ramming, so technically, when I ram his ships, it's almost like I'm half the actual health for the ramming purposes. So my Shadows would be treated as 300 health, and my Eclipses are 400. And with 25 armor, they're only on par with the swords, so ramming is a serious threat, even with frigates. Keep that in mind, folks. Although, even then, the swords are kind of like the slowest of the frigates outside of orcs, quite frankly, so I can still avoid them decently enough so long as I keep a safe space about it. Keep my safe space and try and hit from a flank where, as opposed to going straight through his fleet. And I happily lob the torpedoes because he kind of knows what my fleet composition is already, if he didn't already know it from my persistent mode games with him. So I happily fire torpedoes just to try and disorganize them and try and force him to micromanage it a little bit. If only a little bit, but it's only 8 torpedoes rather, to more precisely. And I was kind of expecting his cruisers to be in the middle, but in the end it turns out his swords are what's in the middle. So we go for the wide flank here, try and take out the first ship we have, and apparently it's a Dauntless. I was not honestly expecting a Dauntless, as I jammed the ships there, jammed the sensors, and this would be a perfect window for my star cannons to have their 9,000 range, because that would have been a perfect opportunity to just wear down that Dauntless with the star cannons right now. Because I could have gave myself 50 seconds of free fire just sitting there. Since he's not quite committing to fighting me just yet. Probably part of it due to the fact there's this asteroid belt in the way, but this is a good starting engagement for me. But that brace for impact is absorbing a lot of damage. I launched 2 bombers on him. I just fired a bunch of star cannons to eat the shields, and pulsars did absolutely no damage. He may have gotten lucky there, but you would have figured I'd do a lot more damage considering the firepower just unleashed on him. And he doesn't really have other frigates nearby to shoot down my bombers, so he definitely got a lucky roll there, potentially. But we are still in a position to try and do damage with his ships and at least still isolate. This Dauntless is all by itself still. The second bomber wave hits hard now that the brace for impact is gone. Brace for impact's gone, that thing just melts immediately. Mind you, it's not a major increase in armor. It makes him twice as likely almost to block the damage though, because we're looking at 25% resistance before the brace for impact into like a 45%, so that's almost doubles the chances of blocking a shot if nothing else, so it's quite significant. It is quite significant, and it's going to show as I try and take out these frigates and all that there, because they're smaller profile, especially with a little bit of latency, I guess, that's going on there. It's going to make these frigates a little bit tricky to kill, so I'm kind of relying on my bombers for that reason. But with another Dauntless presenting itself there, we're going to try and make that a priority, try and do damage to it. As I try and dodge these torpedoes there, try to avoid damage, because right now I'm almost in perfect condition because I've been jamming them all this time, quite frankly. Hell, my eclipses haven't even been detected yet, so it's probably due to lack of extent sensors on any of his ships, so I don't think he was prepared for having to field his Dauntlesses, quite frankly, because I don't even think I've been detected. I'm getting shot at now, quite frankly. I am getting shot at now, but that was like a 5,000 unit range, so thankfully the star cannons are really useful against the frigates, but only if they're already low health, so they're more for cleanup in this exchange. But with their high accuracy and raw number of shots, it helps to mitigate the accuracy penalty the frigates would confer. And I am having a little bit of control issues here as my ships are starting to rebel on me. But with them already warping out the Dauntlesses, I'm in good shape. I just gotta try again to minimize this ramming damage, because those swords hit just as hard as my eclipses. Let's be perfectly honest. They have 50 armor, I have 25, so it balances out when you consider the fragile state and all that. So I do not need to be rammed by them. I'm relying on my bombers to do the work and hopefully have the pulsars do good enough damage to kind of clean up these frigates relatively quickly, because I can't rely on the torpedoes as much as I would like to. I could try and hit with the torpedoes, but it's not likely to hit. And just take a look at that damage. I just hit him with 6 pulsars on the hull and it did absolutely nothing. It could possibly be lag, but those frigates are a lot more troublesome than they appear. And that was even with brace for impact, so I'm seriously wondering if that was latency that just screwed me over there some. It's entirely possible because they're small profile. But all that's left is to clean up. We actually did manage to kill off a sword with a couple of frigates. And we have the star cannons again, on all my ships even, to clean up. But again, another 9 pulsar shots still refuses to kill a sword. It was close, mind you. But when you consider that 15 damage each shot for each pulsar, that should have easily been 100 damage on the hull. So, even with a little bit of latency, because if I was paying attention, that was about 100 millisecond ping. They can complicate the Eldar's attacks quite heavily. They need to rely on bombers and the star cannons, which don't depend on the latency as much. Is what I'm learning from watching this match. But nonetheless, I could have done things a little bit better, needless to say, for the first round, because if that Void Stalker still had its health, I could have forced a victory against the battle station with what Neptis not having anything to defend it now aside for a handful of frigates, so I could have won this faster, but in the end, this still felt good for me. even though we have yet to fight a real Novacan fleet. It was only 2 Novacans, but I do benefit from that a little bit because it's ranked mode.